Welcome to The Great Exchange, a podcast about examining the lies that we have believed and exchanging them for God's truth. I'm your host, Brady Cohn, and joining me once again is our guest co-host, Gordon Opp. Gordon, welcome to today's podcast.
Thanks, Brady. Glad to be here.
So we've heard numerous aspects of your story over the last few weeks, and today we're going to talk about how healthy same-sex friendships have really impacted your life and walking through this journey with same-sex attraction. And really we wanted to discuss how the church and Christian friends and community can have some healthy expectations of us as we're on this journey with same-sex attraction, how they can minister to us well. So I'd love to hear some of your thoughts on how men have really impacted your life in healthy ways.
Well, there's been several that have been, and current ones that have been very healthy. Then there's been some that haven't been very healthy as well. And a lot of things go into that. And going back to what we've talked about a little bit before, part of same-sex attraction, part of the issue is not feeling like one of the guys growing up.
Absolutely.
And you feel like your father is a mystery and men in general are a mystery. And so you're attracted to that. And when you go through puberty, you sexualize it. And it's a very simple definition of how homosexuality develops. But it speaks to it. And certainly that was the case for me.
Yeah.
I remember my very first super attraction to a guy was a camp counselor when I was maybe 11 or 12. And I really wasn't sexual at the time, but oh my goodness, was I attracted to him. I wanted a week-long Bible camp, and I did not want to leave just because he just seemed, it was so awesome to have someone that cared about me and that... I remember as a 10 or 11-year-old kid hugging him before I had to get in the car and go back home with a group of guys, little kids. And that was very monumental. Then the next one was when I think I was 15. I had a learner's permit. And that was a gentleman that was 8 or 10 years older than me that just came alongside me and wanted to help. And I never really shared my struggle with him, but he was right there to walk me through the difficulties that he could see that I had. And I really had a longing for him. And then I was in high school and I also had attraction to him, but never followed through and he didn't have that attraction. Then when I went to school at Moody, there was guys there that I was really attracted to. And I had a couple friends there, and one of them, I eventually did, like my senior year, share with him. But first I had shared with one of my professors who was near retirement, and Dr. Garner, and that was a very healthy relationship as well. Then I've had some where sometimes the guy is quite flattered that I would be attracted to him.
Yeah. And
so they've been dysfunctional where he was an ever straight guy, but he kind of liked the idea that I was.
So there's some unhealthy motivations on that person's end of it.
Right. And then part of my dysfunction is I could become clingy and look for way too much emotional attention from them.
Some emotional neediness and emotional dependency.
Right. And that alongside of fantasies of being with them sexually makes for a really unhealthy relationship. So those can happen. Then there's one that he's probably the best friend I have right now. I've had him for an awful long time. And his wife and my wife were good friends, and we go out to eat an awful lot. And this was, like the late 80s. We were building a house, and he was doing the HVAC system, and he was Christian and stuff. And anyway, ended up going to coffee and stuff. So he heard about my background in with homosexuality and everything, and he made it a point to say, I just want to be your friend in any way I can. And he says, I don't want there to be any problem or anything, but I just want to be your friend. And he was just kind of curious. And I said, well, are you attracted to every woman you see? And he says, no. And I said, well, I'm not attracted to every man I see either. And we can just be friends, Mike.
Yeah.
he said, "Oh, that's great," but then we joke about this because he laid in bed with his wife that night and said, "What's wrong with me?"
Oh yeah, he's insecure that you weren't attracted to him. Uh-huh.
And so I don't know. Over the years, I've just had we're like brothers,
That's
and
great.
we would do anything for the other, and we talk about spiritual things. We talk about just most anything, and that's been a real blessing.
Cool. That's great. Yeah, we weren't designed to walk through this life alone, and I think that when it comes to those of us who deal with same-sex attraction, it can be so hard to navigate those healthy male friendships on both ends of it. And I think that sometimes on the other side of it, so many Christian men feel so awkward having a friend who is same-sex attracted because it's like, what happens if they're attracted to me? And it's like, we can't get too close and need to have all these boundaries to make sure that doesn't happen. So what advice would you give to Christian men in the church who are in a position to walk alongside someone and be a friend with someone who has same-sex attraction to overcome some of those barriers?
Well, I guess first of all, they need to be secure enough in themselves to not be flattered or offended or taken back by the guy that struggles with same-sex attraction, that they might be attracted to him.
Yeah,
In other
absolutely.
words, just let it go. Don't make it an issue. And if they don't make it an issue, then and you grow and have a good relationship, then it won't be an issue for them.
Absolutely. And I've had a couple of times in my life where some of the really big moments in my walk with God and Christian community, and this was usually very early on, was, but still, I mean, as recently as a few years ago, where I told one of the Christian men in my life, it's like, man, like I'm feeling some things for you that I shouldn't be feeling. And they responded with so much love and grace and didn't make a big deal about it. They reaffirmed me. And like that moment just dispelled the attraction I had towards them because we connected and bonded in a gospel-centered way. And so what I was looking for was, affirmation from this person, and the way that my heart twists things is that I want that affirmation in unhealthy ways. And so, but even in telling them about my attraction and then the way that they responded with a gospel-centered, affirming response to me, and that we're able to move on without feeling awkward, took away that attraction because I had what my heart longed for, but I had it in a gospel-centered, healthy relationship. And I can move forward with those men as close friends and brothers in Christ. And so they didn't make it awkward. They felt comfortable and were thankful that I was willing to share such an intimate thing, and just then we could pray about it and both move on in friendship together.
Yeah, that's the whole thing is you want to become part of the guys.
Absolutely.
And the counselor I had, and by the way, he didn't have any training in psychology other than Psych 101. He was just a youth pastor that cared about me and wanted to help me. But one of the things that he said to me that has stuck with me all these years is shame, guilt, loneliness, lust, whatever. We all feel it the same way.
Yes.
And so that brought us together. Now, the object of my lust might be different than his, but we still have those same feelings. It's just different things that cause them. And so it made me feel like, oh, okay, I am like him.
Yeah.
And he's like me. I think that's probably the biggest thing for people to learn that want to help guys with same-sex attraction is to invite them into your masculine world and just be one with them in spite of that issue.
Absolutely.
And part of that is just such an unrealistic expectation we have in our culture of what it means to be a man. And I know that's really changing, but the people that I grew up with, guys weren't very physical,
Yes.
There's other cultures where totally heterosexual guys that never had any homosexual thoughts hold hands.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not advocating that for us in the United States.
But so many times we have our own expectations of masculinity that are not biblical, and we add on our cultural expectations of masculinity, and so then we that's something that some of us then can never. It feels like we can never match or meet up because we're not into sports or cars or all these things that the world thinks is masculine in our culture, and so many times Christian men project that cultural masculinity into the church and falsely believe that to be a Christian masculine man, you need to go camping and you need to do these outdoor stuff. You need to be into cars, sports, and girls, and so it's hard then for us who maybe aren't into all those things to feel like we're accepted in the world of masculinity when they're making the world of masculinity something that it's not supposed to be.
Right. Although I am interested in cars and camping.
Oh, well, that's great. That's awesome. So.
I just happen to like that. I've had friends, one in particular that I can remember he was a hugger. And I mean, he hugged everybody. He wasn't singling me out to hug me. But I'd see him at church and he'd come up and just give me a little big bear hug. And man, I appreciated that.
Yep.
And there was nothing sexual about it at all. It was just a guy thing, and that was his thing.
Some of the biggest healing moments in my life, especially early on, was a big hug from a guy. And I remember one of my mentors and disciplers, Ethan, this was the first within weeks after I come to know Christ, and I was in his car driving down the highway, and I told him for the first time about same-sex attraction and the life I'd been living, and he stopped the car. I thought he was kicking me out, but he came around and gave me a big hug. And
wow.
That was a moment that God used to chip away a piece of my hard-heartedness. And so, so men need to not be insecure about that type of affection. So we've talked about how men in the church can respond better to us. What about us as men with same-sex attraction? How can we have better expectations of those men too? Because I've also been on the flip side of it, where I expected something out of my Christian friends that they weren't able to offer then, or what I was expecting from them was not coming from a place of healthiness, like this emotional neediness that they couldn't ever fulfill because it was not coming from a healthy place in me. So how do you balance that out and weigh that out of we want our Christian friends to walk alongside us in healthy ways, but we also want to have healthy expectations of them. And then there's also times when we might be in stages of life where we don't have some of those friends present in our life, and we are still expected to be obedient to God. And we can't use that as an excuse for disobedience or dysfunction. And that's just the stage of life we're in right now. And we should work towards building those kinds of friendships. But sometimes they're just not there. And I deal with a lot of guys with same-sex attraction who just don't feel like they have those friendships right now. And so how do you navigate that, where it's like they probably need to take some steps to build those friendships, but that's also their current reality?
Right. I think you have to be somewhat intentional. Mm-hmm. And, a lot of times we have this idea that someone else should read my mind.
Yes.
And know that I need some nice words from you or a hug or whatever, and get over it. Nobody can read other people's minds.
Absolutely.
So be intentional. So if you need a friend like that, there are people within churches that would be glad to meet with you once a week for coffee and do it. Then you also need to recognize individual people's limitations. Some guys just have a real difficulty with intimacy with another guy emotionally or in any respect. They can talk about football or the weather or work, and that's it. And so if you're trying to get a relationship with a guy like that, you really need to see what their limitations are.
Absolutely.
And not expect something.
Because that expectation can lead to being disillusioned and bitter towards this person when we're expecting something from them that they weren't able to offer. We want to help them grow too. Like there's opportunities within the church for us men with same-sex attraction to help other men grow. And so it's an opportunity for me to be a part of their journey.
And I've had that where I share with them and they say that it really made a difference in them, and they're able to share their issues with me.
Absolutely.
As well. So one thing is being intentional. Don't just feel sorry for yourself. Get out there. You think maybe your church isn't offering what they could, ask for it. Ask for something reasonable.
That's great.
The other thing I would say is not just one person. Every Friday, and we've done this for years, I have two friends and we meet for coffee and and bagels every Friday morning unless somebody's out of town. And I find that it's so much better if there's 3 of us.
Yeah.
Because then you don't have that. It's a whole lot harder to be needy and leechy off of somebody when there's 3 of you.
Definitely.
And also you share each other's burdens and you get more from each other. Now there's definitely a time when you just need to be one-on-one, and that's extremely beneficial. But that would be my other thing. Be intentional and then share yourself.
Yeah.
Because by you stepping out there and being vulnerable helps them to do the same thing.
Definitely.
And then you realize we're all pretty much alike.
Definitely. Yep. And I love what he said earlier that for most guys, we all idolize people, and it's just the object of our idolatry is different. And so there's way more in common that we have with our Christian brothers. And so we want to be a part of that journey of many times with my own friends, I've been able to help them with their own sexual dysfunction and lust issues, and they didn't realize how much their own sexual desire was lust and coming from a place of dysfunction until I was able to explain what God's taught me about my sexual desires, and they see that's those same traits and those same patterns in their own life, even though it's in a heterosexual context. So I've been able to walk alongside them and help them see what it looks like to live a life where we're denying ourselves and where we're processing through why am I having these feelings, and they need to go through that same process with their heterosexual feelings as I've gone through with my same-sex feelings.
Yeah. When we were talking about the origin of same-sex attraction, we talked about perception. And a lot of times you perceive something and it's different than what reality is.
Yes.
Or sometimes you perceive it to be a lot worse than it is. Well, in our male friendships, a lot of times we have a perception that our ever straight friends, their life is just going great.
Yes.
And, that's wrong.
Yeah.
And God may want to use us to really encourage them and help them to grow. But we have this perception, they have everything together. They're attracted to their wife.
Yeah.
They don't need me. The other thing is envy. Those two, we have misconceptions and then we envy. And a lot of my homosexuality has its roots in envy. I wish I was taller. I wish I was more athletic. Yeah. I wish things came easier to me in this particular way. I wish. And and becomes an idol. A lot of things about all kinds of sexual addictions and perversions have to do with envy.
Absolutely.
So if we get more of a realistic understanding of what our guy friends are like and don't think that they have it so easy. And sometimes I've gotten close with friends and I can actually say, I don't have it quite as bad as they do.
Yeah. It's like, some people think that marriage is the answer for same-sex attraction, but then you go to a Christian bookstore and there's a whole aisle on how to fix your marriage because marriage can be a mess for them too. And so I think that I've seen that when it comes to interacting with my Christian friends, there should be such an aspect of we're all equals in the eyes of God. We have so much of the same idolatry of people, the same our twistedness in our heart of looking to someone to fulfill something inside of us that they shouldn't be. And so there's so much between same-sex attraction and heterosexual attraction that can be so equal. And so I find that very helpful for my Christian friends to understand. I also think there's an aspect, though, that they don't completely understand me, and that's okay.
Absolutely.
And so I think that sometimes men with same-sex attraction, we demand that our friends completely understand us, or our Christian friends pretend like they completely understand us and they don't. And that's okay, because I've had to come to the conclusion Jesus completely understands me. And so I want to move forward into deeper intimacy with my Christian male friends, and I want there to be deeper understanding, but also healthy expectations that we're limited on both sides because we're all fallen and broken and can't completely understand one another. And I can rest in knowing that I am fully understood by Christ.
Right. There's all kinds of scriptures where it says we should encourage one another. And if you look in the Psalms and the Proverbs, there's places where it says a good word at the appropriate time is awesome.
Absolutely.
And so I'm not saying that we definitely need to try to encourage one another in those ways. But what you just said about we can't demand that someone understand everything about us, not even our spouses. We don't understand everything about our spouse, and we can't expect them to understand. That doesn't mean you don't try. That doesn't mean you don't use those words.
Build those relationships over the years to where you grow a deeper understanding of this person.
But then you mentioned about Jesus understands everything about us, absolutely everything. I've been reading a book several times by Dane Ortland, his book Gentle and Lowly, and it's based on Matthew, where Jesus says, "Come unto me, all you are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest, because I am gentle and lowly of heart." When you talk about the real Brady Cone, we talk about what's his heart like. Well, he's got a good heart. You know, this is what I know about him, and your wife probably knows you better than most. Well, Jesus knows everything about your heart.
Yes.
He's telling us that his heart is gentle, power, under control, and lowly. That has the idea of accessibility. Anybody can come to Jesus. It's not about the severity of your sin, how badly you sinned. It's about, will you come to him? And when we come to him, that means we fear him in a sense that he sets the rules. He's in heaven. We're not. He made us. He created sex. He created man and woman. We didn't. He knows all about it. I will rest in the fact that he knows everything about me and that he loves me. And I tell you, when I rest in the fact that God knows me inside and out, still wants me.
Wow. Yeah.
And some of the scriptural passages talks about the disciples laying on Jesus' chest. And can you imagine having your head on Jesus' chest and hearing his heartbeat? That's his heart for you, gentle and lowly.
Wow.
And so, all these human things that I don't want to put down for a minute. God wants us to have godly, intimate relationships with other men. He wants us to have this godly intimacy with our wives, but it's always underneath our intimacy with him. And when we have that intimacy with him, we have so much more to give to our spouse and to our friends.
And to provide for those friendships. I think that what I see so many times men in same-sex attraction is that in seasons of life where they aren't experiencing those friendships, they use that as an excuse for their sin, because to act out on it, well, they'll say, well, the church isn't meeting these needs, so and God wants these needs to be met, so I'll do it in a sexual way. And so I love what he said about being intentional, and we have responsibility in developing those relationships, understanding other men's capabilities on what they are capable of providing us right now, and then also not making those relationships all about just ourselves, but we want to be investing in these people too, and they have something to learn from us. And so, and when it comes down to it, we're fully known by Jesus, and so we should be going through life being intentional, developing these deeper relationships with other men, in the same time resting in God's grace, so we have everything we need from him.
Right. And just to see other people like God sees us. We don't know behind this great facade where some guy might be looking really like he's got things all together. There might be hurts and anxieties and real troubles that we don't know about.
Definitely.
And so to open ourselves up to that and to be one of the guys. So to speak.
I have seen that type of depth in someone really help me deal with my attraction towards them, because it's easy to look at them from a distance and see that exterior image, and I want that so bad, and that wanting what they have, leads to this attraction towards them. But once I really get to know them, and I see that they're just a broken person who needs the gospel like I do, then it's like it gives them some humanity, where it's like, man, like, who do I think I am thinking that I should be taking from them when they need the gospel themselves?
And also realizing no matter how much somebody has in the way of, everything's going their way and physique and all this, it's all temporal.
Absolutely.
I've had,
absolutely.
As you get older, you have friends that get sick and die. and death is an awful thing. God never planned for it. And it's each of our ends. It's going to happen. And so we just need to get over this Pollyanna idea how life should be.
Yes.
And I think the only way that you can really do that successfully is to fear God, to know that he's the one that created you and he loves you. And it is, Romans says it's the kindness of God that leads to repentance. My goodness, it was certainly that way for me. And so we need to be kind to people who struggle with different things.
Absolutely.
And God will put people in our lives that are kind in spite of through our affliction.
Absolutely. Well, Gordon, thank you so much for joining us yet again. I love these conversations. I love your wisdom and courage and your story and just the biblical truth that God has made so real in your life. And so I pray that for everyone who's listening this week, that as we examine some of the lies that we have believed, that you are better equipped to walk alongside others and to examine your own lies and examine the lies in other people and trade them for God's truth and have healthy friendships, healthy relationships with the appropriate expectations. And God uses those relationships and he uses us in those relationships.
Absolutely.
So thank you for joining us on another episode of The Great Exchange.